Hey guys, somebody asked me to replicate this aircraft yoke. I believe it's for some kind of beechcraft. They wanted some parts for strictly display purposes. They do some custom embroidering and wanted to show off their embroidery work just on some dummy yokes. So I decided that making a silicone mold might be the best way to go since the shape's kind of complex for a composite mold. So you can see here, just kind of setting the part up on a piece of wood with some hot glue. We have the clay, and I'm building up kind of the parting plane here with the clay. Kind of slow work, takes a while. This is really my first time making a large silicone mold like this. I've done some very small things, but this one was quite large for me. So here's the clay, just packing it on, and I'm going to be using some smooth-on products here. I believe the silicone is Mold Max 30. It's the pink stuff that I'll be using, and I'll be using smooth-on Onyx slow cure black acrylic, the resin to pour the parts with. So again, just working with the clay. This took a very long time. It was a ton of clay. Um, I bought a lot of little packs because the store near me didn't have it in bulk. But yeah, here it is, just packing in the clay, and I'll start smoothing it out here in a minute and making it look a lot nicer. I did pick up kind of a clay sculpting toolkit from Michaels. That's also where I bought the clay, and came with a lot of neat little tools that I use to work this clay and make it neat, and clean up the parting lines. The part I'm working with is cast aluminum, and I did block off the openings, as you can see there, with just some scrap metal, and also just bondoed up the holes just to seal everything up. You can kind of see some stitching marks on the part there. It was previously upholstered, and the upholstery was ripped off. So here I'm using a straight edge just to kind of try to get straight lines when I try to clean up the edges of this clay. You'll see me try to use this wire method to cut, but it was just like too much clay, and I was struggling with that. So in the end, I ended up just getting a large knife from the kitchen, and that worked pretty good. So you'll see the knife coming out here shortly. There it is. Yeah, this was a neat project. I had a lot of fun making the molds. Here I'm using the some of the tools that come with the clay sculpting kit to get these edges cleaned up and kind of try to carve some the air release channels and various other things into the surface of the parting plane. This is a syringe I had laying around that I cut up to use as like kind of a pour spout, and it worked pretty good. If I were to do it again, I'd probably try to find something a little larger. This is a very big part, and I think it's important to be able to pour it very quick because I had some issues with that, getting enough material in the mold before it started to set up. Just doing some smoothing here. Again, using the tools that came with that mold sculpting kit. I'm sure I'm going to use that kit on other projects here in the future. All this video is sped up 3 to 4 times, and it doesn't quite show everything I did, but I think it gives you an idea. You can see I used a bolt to make those impressions for the index marks. So just use some miscellaneous bolts and I think some round objects I happen to have too. And now I'm carving some more index marks here, those long kind of slices on the side. And then setting up the wood dams, I just have had some plywood handy, so I wrapped it in some scrap vinyl just to make sure it had kind of a smooth, non-porous surface. You can see that white vinyl on the wood there, and here I'm hot gluing the plywood down, and I have a square in my hand, trying to keep things somewhat square. And then eventually I will seal up all the edges when all the wood dams are hot glued on. I will take some clay and just seal up all the edges and make sure it's kind of, waterproof, liquid proof, as it were. So again, using that square, try to help me out, and got a little tiny hot glue gun there. I have a bigger one, but I left it at the shop. And yeah, like I didn't really know a whole lot about making large silicone molds, but honestly, I just watched a bunch of YouTube videos and kind of got an idea of how things go and what I needed to buy, and I've just watched as many videos as I could. So here's the Mold Max 30, getting it ready. We will be degassing it before we pour, and the degassing worked very well with this Mold Max. It didn't have any bubbles on the surface of the mold, so I was very happy with that. So we're mixing it up. I ended up mixing a lot of small batches and just pouring it in a little at a time because my degassing chamber is not so big. And it worked out pretty well. It took a while, but it worked well. So I gotta stay on top of this because if the first time I did this, it overflowed the cup and it made a mess in the chamber there. So I kind of was working the handle to keep it from overflowing. Looks kind of gross, doesn't it? Kind of creeped me out a little bit, like something out of an alien movie. Okay, pouring silicone into the mold, starting off the part, trying not to pour directly on the part, and just letting that silicone material flow over everything nicely. I did try to pour in like the lowest part of the mold there, and yeah, I had to mix a ton of material in multiple batches. There were some bubbles that floated up to the surface here, but again, no bubbles on the surface of the mold, so that degassing worked well. So the idea here is we'll, do this first half of the mold, let it cure completely, then flip it over and remove all the clay from the backside, and then set up the dams again, the plywood dams, and pour the remaining half. And everything with the mold went, according to plan. I took my time and tried to set everything up as good as I could. Watched a lot of videos, and yeah, everything went smooth. Took a while, but I didn't really have any problems. Here we can see just kind of pouring the last of the silicone in. I tried to make sure I had about 10 millimeters above those the highest part of the part there. So we ended up with some very thick molds here. We're breaking off the dams, and we'll flip it over and kind of get that clay off. So we'll unveil the first half of the mold here. And it just came out really nice. Some of the paint or whatnot transferred over, but I didn't care about that. And then yeah, here removing clay. So I have a bunch of clay now, which I guess is good if I ever use it again. I just stuffed it in Ziploc bags and stashed it somewhere. After the clay is gone, you got to clean up the part a little bit. But here we are set up again, so the dams are back on, and I pushed that funnel piece back in. Starting to pour. I did spray on a little bit of the that Man 200 mold release before we started pouring the second half of the mold, and I did spray a little bit of that on the first. Before I did the first half of the mold too, I sprayed some of that Man 200 release on the part and on the clay. So we were utilizing mold release pretty much on every process when we poured. And breaking off the dams again should reveal completed molds here. And we should be popping off the one side here. Kind of was a little bit of a struggle at first, but I wasn't really worried about it. Eventually, it let go, and we had a clean release. There it is. And this yoke actually came out fairly easy. So we have super nice molds, a little bit of flashing to trim up. Did that. I could actually just pulled most of it off, like you see right there with my fingers. And I used the knife in some spots. And here I'm kind of working on the removing the channels for the air channels. And here we're pouring, so we're using the Smooth On Onyx Slow for the first pour. And honestly, even though it's slow cure, I had to mix up so much that the stuff was kicking off really fast. So this is something I've been struggling with. I did attempt to degas this, and the degassing took too long. And I ended up only pouring about half a part before it all gelled up and hardened. So this one here is not degassed, and it ended up making a decent part, but it definitely had some kind of orange peel effect with the small surface bubbles on the part. And yeah, so it's something I gotta work on. I did pour several parts with very slow cure infusion epoxy resin, and that actually worked better than this acrylic. So yeah, it's kind of a tricky thing because the part's so big. Getting enough material in the molds quickly before whatever you're working with kicks off. The degassing. An issue with the epoxy is it kind of builds up heat so as it cures. So I got some problems with that. But in the end, I managed to pull several good parts from the mold. I don't need to make too many, so it basically served its purpose. And we got some parts, and I did actually use some Bondo and Bondo up some of the holes because these parts will just get embroidered anyway, so it doesn't matter much. But I think more experimentation would yield better parts. I'm thinking of degassing, going back to the acrylic, the onyx, and degassing very small batches, and pouring them in as quickly as I can and mixing up the batches, separately. And I might get better results there. So yeah, we're going to let this cure. Again, this is the acrylic, the Onyx Slow. And this is actually the second part I made with the Onyx Slow. The first one, the acrylic kind of hardened too quick on me, and I couldn't get the whole thing poured. But this came out pretty good. I actually ended up hitting the surface here with some 220 grit sandpaper, and I achieved some good results here. So happy with this. Pretty strong part too. I was surprised. And then at the end, we'll just have some pictures. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. First time with big silicone molds. And hit that subscribe button if you found this video interesting or helpful.